The war between the Thorians and the Zephyrians had gone on for hundreds of years. No one could remember a time when the two alien races were not fighting each other. The battle stretched across many star systems, with neither side able to gain an advantage over the other. Captain Jae-sung was a Thorian who had been fighting the Zephyrians for most of his adult life. He was the leader of a large Thorian fleet, and he took his ships into battle against the enemy almost every day. On this particular day, Captain Jae-sung led his fleet in an attack on a group of Zephyrian ships that had entered Thorian space. The Thorian and Zephyrian ships fired powerful energy weapons at each other, lighting up the darkness of space with bright flashes. Many ships on both sides were badly damaged or destroyed in the fighting. Captain Jae-sung's own ship was hit several times, shaking the whole vessel and injuring some of his crew members. But the brave captain did not retreat. He continued to give orders and fight until the Zephyrian ships finally turned and fled. The battle was over, but it was not a true victory for Captain Jae-sung or the Thorians. Like so many other fights in this long war, this one ended with neither side winning. Both the Thorians and Zephyrians had lost ships and crew members. As he looked out at the wreckage of ships floating in space, Captain Jae-sung felt very tired. He had seen the same sight too many times before. He wondered if this terrible war would ever end, or if the Thorians and Zephyrians would keep fighting each other forever. Captain Jae-sung did not know it yet, but change was coming to the galaxy. On a faraway planet called Earth, a species known as humans was about to get involved in the conflict between the Thorians and Zephyrians, and when the humans became part of the war, everything would change in ways that no one could predict. Word began to spread through the galaxy about a new species that had been discovered. They were called humans, and they came from a planet named Earth that was very far away from the wars between the Thorians and Zephyrians. The news of the humans reached the leaders of both alien races at about the same time. The Thorians and Zephyrians had been fighting for so long that they were always looking for anything that might give them an advantage over their enemy. Both sides thought that maybe these humans could become their allies and help them win the war once and for all. The Thorian and Zephyrian leaders each decided to send a group of representatives to Earth. These representatives would try to talk to the humans and convince them to join their side in the war against the other alien race. One of the Thorians chosen to go to Earth was a young officer named Lieutenant Min-seo. He was very smart and skilled at his job, and his leaders believed he would be able to make the humans want to help the Thorians. Lieutenant Min-seo was excited to be part of such an important mission. He had never met an alien species before that wasn't an enemy. He wondered what the humans would be like. Would they look similar to Thorians? Would they have advanced technology? He couldn't wait to find out. As Lieutenant Min-seo and the other Thorian representatives prepared for their long journey to Earth, the Zephyrians were doing the same. Both groups of aliens knew that the humans could be very important to the future of the war. If one side could get the humans to join them, it might finally tip the balance of power in their favor. But the humans had no idea that any of this was happening. On Earth, they were just going about their normal lives, completely unaware that they were about to be caught up in an alien conflict that had lasted for centuries. The meetings between humans and aliens that were about to take place would change everything, for the people of Earth and for the whole galaxy. When the alien ships landed on Earth, they were greeted by the human leaders. The president of Earth was a man named Sung-min, and his most trusted advisor was a woman named Jae-yoon. They welcomed the Thorians and Zephyrians and listened carefully as each group explained why they had come. The aliens told the humans about the great war that had been going on for centuries between their two races. They described the terrible weapons they used and the many planets that had been destroyed in the fighting. Both the Thorians and Zephyrians said that they wanted the humans to join their side in the war. They promised to share their advanced technology with the people of Earth if they would agree to help fight against the other alien race. President Sung-min and Jae-yoon were surprised by what they heard. They had no idea that such a huge war was happening in space. The technology that the aliens described sounded amazing, but the humans were not sure if they wanted to get involved in someone else's conflict. The president and his advisor talked privately about what they should do. They knew that the alien technology could help the people of Earth in many ways, but they also worried about what might happen if humans got caught up in the fighting between the Thorians and Zephyrians. In the end, President Sung Min decided that he needed more information before he could make a choice. He told the aliens that he would send some humans back with them to see the war for themselves. That way, Earth's leaders could learn more about what was really happening and decide if they wanted to pick a side. The Thorians and Zephyrians were not completely happy with this answer, but they agreed to the president's plan. Each alien group chose a few humans to take back with them to the areas of space where the fighting was happening. These humans were not soldiers or leaders. They were just regular people who were brave enough to travel far from home to see something completely new. As the alien ships left Earth, the chosen humans wondered what they would find out in space. They knew they were about to have an adventure unlike anything any human had experienced before. What they didn't know was that their presence would soon change the war and the galaxy forever. Word count: 398. Captain Jae-sung was not happy when he was told that he would have to take some human observers with him to the war. He had enough to worry about without having to look after a group of aliens who had never even seen a space battle before. But orders were orders, so he prepared his ship to welcome the humans on board. When the humans arrived, Captain Jae-sung was surprised to see that one of them was a woman named Eun-jung. She didn't look like a soldier or a leader, but as soon as she started talking, the captain could tell that she was very smart. Eun-jung asked lots of questions about the Thorians' weapons and ships. She seemed especially interested in how everything worked. As Captain Jae-sung's ship traveled through space towards the area where the fighting was happening, he spent more time talking with Eun-jung. He found out that she was a scientist who studied advanced technology. Even though the Thorians had very powerful weapons, Eun-jung seemed to understand how they worked very quickly. The human observers were shocked when they finally saw a space battle up close. The bright flashes from the weapons and the explosions of ships were like nothing they had ever seen before. Captain Jae-sung's ship stayed at a safe distance, but even from far away, the humans could tell how terrible and destructive the war was. Over the next few days, Eun-jung and the other humans watched many battles between the Thorians and the Zephyrians. They saw powerful alien ships destroyed in seconds. They saw the wreckage of ships floating in space, with the bodies of dead crew members among the broken parts. As terrible as it was to watch, Eun-jung never stopped studying everything she saw. She took detailed notes and made complex calculations on her computer. Captain Jae-sung could tell that her mind was always working, trying to understand everything about the war and the weapons that the aliens used. The captain began to develop a deep respect for Eun-jung and her dedication to learning. Even in the middle of all the fighting and destruction, she stayed focused on her work. Captain Jae-sung had a feeling that this human scientist was going to be very important to the future of the war, though he did not know exactly how. As the human observer's time with the Thorian fleet came to an end, Captain Jae-sung knew that he would miss Eun-jung's company and intelligence. He hoped that whatever she had learned would somehow help bring an end to this terrible conflict. But even he could not imagine the huge role that she and her fellow humans would soon play in changing the galaxy forever. When Eun-jung and the other human observers returned to Earth, they immediately started working on a plan to end the war between the Thorians and the Zephyrians. Eun-jung gathered together a team of the smartest scientists on Earth. She shared with them everything she had learned about the aliens' weapons and technology. Together, Eun-jung and her team studied the detailed notes she had taken during her time in space. They looked for any weaknesses in the alien ships and weapons. It was hard work, but finally, they found something important. The scientists realized that both the Thorians and the Zephyrians used the same rare material to power their most powerful weapons. This material was very strong, but it also had a hidden weakness. If it was hit with a precise type of energy wave, it would stop working completely. Eun-jung and her team worked day and night to design a special device that could create this energy wave. They knew that if they could build this device and use it against the aliens' weapons, they could stop the war in an instant. As the humans worked in secret, the fighting between the Thorians and Zephyrians continued. On the alien ships and planets, soldiers like Captain Jae-sung and Lieutenant Min-seo fought hard battles against their enemies. Many lives were lost on both sides. Lieutenant Min-seo had been one of the Thorians who had gone to Earth to ask for the humans' help. After seeing the destruction of the war up close, he had started to question whether all the fighting was really necessary. He didn't say these thoughts out loud, but deep down, he hoped that the humans would find a way to bring peace. When Eun-jung's team had finished building their special device, they knew they needed to get it to the aliens as quickly as possible. They decided to send a secret message to Lieutenant Min-seo. They hoped that he would be willing to help them, even if it meant going against his own leaders. Lieutenant Min-seo was surprised when he received the humans' message. At first, he wasn't sure what to do. If he helped the humans, he would be betraying his own people. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that ending the war was more important than loyalty to any one side. So, in the deepest secrecy, Lieutenant Min-seo agreed to help Eun-jung and her team. He would work with them to bring their device to the heart of the fighting, where it could finally bring an end to the terrible war that had lasted far too long. It was a brave decision, and one that would change the course of history for the entire galaxy. The humans' plan to end the war required careful timing and cooperation. Eun-jung and her team knew that they needed to get their special device close to the heart of the fighting, where it could affect the weapons of both the Thorians and the Zephyrians at the same time. To make this happen, they needed help from both sides of the war. Lieutenant Min-seo worked in secret to convince some of his fellow Thorian soldiers that the humans' plan was worth supporting. It wasn't easy, but he managed to gather a small group who were tired of the endless fighting and ready to try something new. On the Zephyrian side, the humans had also been working to make contact with those who might be open to a peaceful solution. They found an ally in a young Zephyrian officer named Arya, who had seen too many of her friends die in battle. Together, this unlikely group of humans and aliens worked out a daring plan. They would create a distraction that would draw the main forces of both the Thorians and Zephyrians into one massive battle. While the two sides were focused on fighting each other, a small team led by Eun-jung and Lieutenant Min-seo would sneak into the heart of the battlefield and activate the human device. It was a risky plan, and many things could go wrong. But they all knew it was worth trying if it could bring an end to the war that had caused so much pain and destruction. When the day of the big battle arrived, everything seemed to be going according to plan. The Thorian and Zephyrian fleets clashed in a spectacular display of weapons fire and explosions. While they were distracted, Eun-jung, Min-seo, and their team quietly made their way to the agreed-upon location. But just as they were about to activate the device, they were spotted by a group of Thorian soldiers who were not part of Min-seo's group. A fierce firefight broke out, with energy beams crisscrossing the battlefield. Eun-jung and her team fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Just when all seemed lost, Captain Jae-sung and his ship arrived on the scene. He had been monitoring the battle from a distance, and he had realized what the humans and Min-seo were trying to do. In a split-second decision, he chose to support their efforts for peace. With Captain Jae-sung's help, Eun-jung and her team fought their way clear. They reached the activation point and triggered the human device just as the main Thorian and Zephyrian fleets were closing in for another round of all-out war. Suddenly, every weapon on the battlefield went silent. The device had worked perfectly, neutralizing the power systems of both sides simultaneously. For the first time in centuries, an eerie quiet settled over the war-torn region of space. The sudden ceasefire was shocking to the soldiers on both sides. Many of them had known nothing but war for their entire lives. They looked around in confusion, unsure of what to do next. But for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope that things could be different. The road to a real peace would not be easy, but the humans had shown that it was possible. And with brave leaders like Jung, Min Seo, and Captain Jae Sung, there was a chance that the cycle of violence could finally be broken. A new era for the galaxy was about to begin. In the immediate aftermath of the deactivation of the weapons, confusion reigned on both sides. Soldiers who had been fighting each other moments before now found themselves staring at their enemies across a silent battlefield, unsure of what to do next. It was Captain Jae Sung who made the first move. Using his ship's communication system, he broadcast a message to all the Thorian and Zephyrian forces in the area. He declared that the war was over, and that it was time for both sides to lay down their arms and start talking to each other. At first, many of the soldiers were hesitant. They had been trained to fight, not to make peace. But as the reality of the situation sank in, more and more of them began to see the wisdom in Captain Jae Sung's words. Slowly, tentatively, Thorians and Zephyrians began to emerge from their ships and fortifications. They met in the neutral space between their lines, eyeing each other warily. But as they began to talk, they started to realize that they had more in common than they had ever imagined. They were all tired of the endless fighting, of the constant fear and loss. They all wanted a chance at a better life, one where they could explore the wonders of the galaxy in peace rather than constantly battling for survival. As word of the ceasefire spread, more and more ships and soldiers laid down their weapons and joined the growing crowd in the neutral zone. Impromptu celebrations broke out as Thorians and Zephyrians mingled, sharing stories and even laughter for the first time in generations. Jung, Min Seo, and the other humans watched in amazement as the scene unfolded before them. They had hoped their plan would bring an end to the fighting, but they had never imagined it would happen so quickly or so completely. There was still much work to be done, of course. Official treaties would need to be negotiated, and old grudges and prejudices would not disappear overnight. But for the first time in centuries, there was real hope for a lasting peace in the galaxy. As the celebrations continued, Captain Jae Sung sought out Jung and her team. He thanked them for their courage and ingenuity, recognizing that none of this would have been possible without their intervention. Jung, in turn, praised Jae Sung for his leadership and his willingness to take a chance on peace. She knew that his example would be crucial in the days and weeks to come, as both the Thorians and Zephyrians learned to live and work together. As the humans prepared to return to Earth, they knew that they had been part of something truly historic. They had helped to end a war that had seemed eternal, and in doing so, they had forged a new bond between their species and the others who shared the galaxy. The road ahead would not be easy, but with leaders like Jae Sung, Min Seo, and Jung to light the way, and with the memory of this incredible day to inspire them, anything seemed possible. A new era of peace and cooperation was dawning, and the whole galaxy would be forever changed by what had happened here. In the days and weeks following the end of the war, the hard work of building a lasting peace began in earnest. Leaders from both the Thorian and Zephyrian sides met to discuss the terms of an official ceasefire and to begin the process of dismantling the massive war machines that had dominated their societies for so long. Captain Jae Sung and Lieutenant Min Seo were among those chosen to represent their people in these negotiations. They had seen firsthand the horrors of the war and the promise of peace, and they were determined to do everything in their power to ensure that this opportunity was not squandered. The talks were not always easy. Centuries of distrust and animosity could not be erased overnight, and there were times when it seemed that the fragile peace might collapse. But Jae Sung and Min Seo, along with their Zephyrian counterparts, persevered. They knew that the alternative to peace was a return to the endless cycle of destruction that had nearly consumed their civilizations. As the negotiations progressed, the role of the humans in ending the war became more widely known. The story of Jung and her team's daring plan spread throughout the galaxy, becoming a symbol of what could be achieved when different species worked together towards a common goal. On Earth, the returning heroes were greeted with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Many had trouble comprehending the scale of what had been accomplished. The idea that a small group of humans had been instrumental in ending an interstellar war was almost too much to process. But for Yun Jung and her colleagues, the true reward was the knowledge that they had made a real difference. They had gone from being observers on the sidelines of a cosmic conflict to key players in shaping the future of the galaxy. As the peace talks continued, Yun Jung was invited to participate as an observer and advisor. Her unique perspective as an outsider who had studied both sides of the conflict was invaluable in helping to bridge the gaps between the Thorians and the Zephyrians. Over time, the former enemies began to find more and more common ground. They discovered shared interests in exploration, scientific discovery, and cultural exchange. The weapons of war were gradually replaced by tools of cooperation and understanding. Through it all, the bond between the humans and their new alien allies grew stronger. Captain Jae-sung and Yun Jung, in particular, developed a deep friendship based on mutual respect and a shared commitment to maintaining the hard-won peace. In the end, the treaty that emerged from the negotiations was hailed as a masterpiece of diplomacy and compromise. It laid the groundwork for a new era of cooperation and prosperity in the galaxy, one in which the Thorians, the Zephyrians, the humans, and countless other species could work side by side as partners and friends. The war that had once seemed eternal was finally over, and in its place, a new chapter in the story of the galaxy was beginning. And at the heart of it all were the brave and visionary individuals, human and alien alike, who had dared to imagine a different future and who had worked tirelessly to make that dream a reality. Years turned into decades, and the peace that had once seemed so fragile became the new normal for the galaxy. The Thorians, the Zephyrians, and the humans, along with countless other species, learned to live and work together in ways that would have been unimaginable during the long centuries of war. Under the leadership of visionaries like Captain Jae-sung, who rose to become a respected diplomat and statesman, the former adversaries embarked on ambitious projects of exploration and discovery. They sent joint missions to chart the furthest reaches of the galaxy, to seek out new worlds and new civilizations. On these voyages, the skills and knowledge of all were valued equally. Thorian navigators worked side by side with Zephyrian engineers and human scientists, pooling their expertise to overcome the challenges of deep space travel. Back in the heart of the galaxy, the story of how the war had ended became a touchstone for a new shared history. Children of all species learned about the bravery of Yun Jung and her team, the wisdom of Captain Jae-sung, and the tireless efforts of countless others who had worked to build a lasting peace. The device that the humans had used to neutralize the weapons of war became a symbol of the power of cooperation and ingenuity. Replicas of it were displayed in museums and public squares across the galaxy, a reminder of what could be achieved when differences were set aside in pursuit of a common goal. For Yun Jung, and many of the others who had been at the heart of these world-changing events, life moved on in rewarding but often unpredictable ways. Some, like Min Seo, found new callings in helping to rebuild the worlds that had been scared by the long war. Others, like Arya, became leaders in the new institutions of cooperation that arose in the war's wake. But no matter where their paths led them, they all carried with them the memories of that extraordinary time when everything had changed. They had been part of something greater than themselves, something that had rewritten the very fabric of the galaxy. And as the years passed, and new generations took up the ongoing work of maintaining peace and seeking out new frontiers, the legacy of those fateful days lived on. The story of how a small group of determined individuals, against all odds, had brought an end to an age-old conflict and ushered in a new era of unity and discovery became a source of inspiration for all who heard it. In the end, it was a testament to the enduring power of hope, to the idea that even in the darkest of times, the light of understanding and cooperation could still shine through. The galaxy had fought for years, but in one shining moment, the courage and vision of a few had changed everything. And that was a lesson that would never be forgotten. As the stars continued to turn in the vast expanse of space, the galaxy moved forward, united and at peace, ready to face whatever challenges and wonders the future might bring together.